Ingram Ibae. We pay homage to all of our spiritual ancestors from time immemorial to the present moment. Libations.
I see.
Gurus, Mojabai, Ibae. We pay homage to all of the gurus, all of the saints, sages, mystics, Buddhas, fakirs, also since time immemorial. We thank you. We honor you. Libations.
I see.
Sangha Mojaban Ibaye. We pay homage to all of the spiritual traditions, spiritual communities, and sanghas from the past to this very moment. We thank you. We honor you. Libations.
I see.
Thank you, and good afternoon. How's everyone?
All right.
Good afternoon. My name is Gano Brooks, the proud president of Malcolm X College, and welcome to Karnak, the Karnak Wellness Institute. We're glad that you're here, and this is the second of our spring series. You know, we kicked it off last week with Dr. Peace, and we did a fantastic tribute to Margaret Burroughs, Dr. Burroughs. And so now we come with our seminars, and this spring series promises to be outstanding. Of course, we had to put our best hitter up first, always gets on base, is always in a position to score and to start things off right for us. Because we take Karnak very, very seriously. Very, very seriously. And we're on a mission. This is not something we just come to see each other and say bye. We go out into our communities and we make a difference. We change the environment, we change the culture, we change ourselves. So we're so glad to have you here. We have Dr. Ingram, who's going to present an outstanding presentation, and I can always deal with myself and how I handle personal problems. Is anybody here that does not have any problems? No problems at all? If you don't, you're in the wrong place. You need to be out there sharing that with everybody else. Why, you are perfect. No problems at all? There's not many people like that, because that's just not the way the world is. We all have some kind of problem that we have to handle, we have to deal with. And how you deal with it determines a lot. It determines what happens to the people around you, the person that you're dealing with who's causing that problem, and of course it deals with you, how you handle the problem. So I'm so happy to be here, so happy to be able to listen to this presentation, and happy for us to be kicking off Karnak, because we're going to be here every Saturday. Don't forget, every Saturday we have our historian keeping the historical documentation and making sure that we're streaming this live to everybody who's in earshot, and who is not in earshot, they can still hear us on the internet. So go to Malcolm X College, mxccc.edu, and click on Karnak. Click on Karnak, and you'll be able to stream us live. So without further ado, we're going to bring up our renowned, our respected, our sage, our guru, our secret weapon, Dr. Leonard Ingram.
Actually, I'm simply delighted that we're small. Small audiences have never bothered me because it simply provides an opportunity to move deeper into the topic at hand. And certainly today I wanted to offer you some things to consider. Some things to consider about life itself. One of the founding mission statements incorporated in the creation of Karnak was to make available a different kind of education. Karnak was not purposed to simply duplicate the kind of conventional education you could get in the typical university somewhere, simply because that education has already proven to be ineffective and really producing first-class human beings. Conventional education tends to devote itself to just a further reinforcement of our own human weaknesses in the form of selfishness, greed, radical individualism, and so forth and so on. Conventional education reinforces the egoic condition, which is the problem. No matter how much technology and science is introduced in the form of a curriculum, fundamentally, none of that makes you a better human being. Oftentimes, it makes you simply more capable of acting out of your own human deficiency. So Karnak has never been purposed to simply duplicate conventional education, but rather to provide a very different kind of education. It's interesting to note, this being Black History Month, that while ordinarily we celebrate all things black, so forth and so on, and that's fine. But you have to understand something, beloved. It's the kind of ancient African people that historians like Herodotus wrote about. That Herodotus' encounter was not black people simply because they had black skin. What they considered to be African was something altogether different than your skin color, your cultural practices, so forth and so on. Herodotus, writing in his book 2 of his history, says that what he encountered and saw in Kemet was gods walking on earth. Very different. You see nationalists saw gods walking on earth. People who had perfected their humanity. You follow me? That's a very different process than Afrocentrism and nationalism. So today I wanted to, if you would indulge me, offer you some of that kind of ancient knowledge for your consideration. And it's just for your consideration. And we can have a dialogue about it. We're very small. One of the observations that all of you probably have made, as I have, is that this place that we're in, this world that we're in, seems to be full of chaos. And it was the same in ancient times. Ancient African people were in pursuit of creating order in this chaos here. To deal with the problem of human existence as it really is. And if you will notice, human existence is simply a unending flux of ups and downs, trials and tribulations, vicissitudes. And our reaction to this nature of human existence has always been one of stress. So we're going to get into that a little bit because there's a relationship between stress and problem. But before we go too far, I think the best thing to do is to define some terms so that we're all on the same page. And so I'd like to ask you for a definition of a problem. What is a problem? Because we're here to talk about dealing with personal problems. So it seems to me that the first step then is to define what is a problem. No fooling. Yes, beloved.
It's a situation that you would like an answer to.
It's a situation that you would what?
Like an answer.
You would like, it's okay, it's something that you want an answer to. So a lot of problems we have are problems that are rooted in our lack of knowledge. What are some other ways of defining a problem? What is the psychodynamics of a problem? What makes something a problem? Yes, beloved.
Something that disturbs you.
That's what a problem does to you, all right? It disturbs you. Yes, ma'am.
We can't resolve it.
It's unresolvable. We can't change it. I like that. It's a kind of situation that we find we are not in control.
Right.
All right? What else? See, what's a problem?
Yeah, something that stagnates your growth.
It stagnates your growth. It definitely can stagnate your growth. But what is the fundamental phenomenology that we label as being a problem? You see? Because there's problems in life. You see? What's the problem? When you are encountering some situation or circumstance that you don't like, that you want to be other than the way it is. Yeah. It seems like, in certain sense, that human existence is inherently an endless flow of problems. You got problems. You see. In ancient philosophy and spirituality, that's what was dealt with. Didn't deal too much with metaphysics. You see. Even down to the time of the Buddha, one of the great teachers in history, there was never this emphasis on metaphysics. So the emphasis was on, you got some problems. And how do problems feel? And we're going to get into some examples of problems because the ideal here is keep this real. How does it feel when you have a problem?
Angry,
It can make you angry,
hurt, upset,
angry, hurt,
stress,
stressed,
Anxious,
anxious.
anxiety, yeah.
depressed,
What else?
depressed,
Depressed. In the picture. The Buddha had a term for all of those feelings. They call it dukkha,
Suffering.
suffering. Fundamentally, life lived without a profound understanding of how it really is suffering. Now, to I want you to accept this argument simply because I'm saying it. Let's look into it. Let's see, is that so? And Karnak, as in all genuine context is dealing with truth, the ideal is to not patronize one another here. In Hindu culture, this kind of a gathering is referred to as satsang. Satsang means a group of people coming together in pursuit of the truth, and nothing but the truth. So we're here to find out the truth about it all. You see? Something else to say about problems. What are some examples of problems you have or you have heard others have? As President Brooks said, I know you all don't have no problem, but you probably live with people who have problems. You may be a problem, for others, in fact. But what are the kinds of problems that people tend to identify in their lives? What are some kind of typical problems?
Yeah, problems with a spouse or mate.
I knew you were going to say that.
I'm running to it all the time.
Actually, you're absolutely right. We have problems with our spouses, people in our family, our human relations in general. It is interesting to note that most of the dukkha, most of the suffering that we undergo as human beings is a kind of suffering related to our relationship suffering. Is that about right? Oh boy, we could spend days just talking about that. People spend fortunes on therapy, trying to find some relief from the dukkha that is inherent in human relationships. They spend countless billions of dollars on drugs, alcohol, shopping sprees, vacation, all in the service of finding some relief from this dukkha that is inherent in our intimate relationship with others. So some people's problem that they have is with their husbands, right? Their wives. Okay, what else? Talk to me.
Economical problem.
Money, right? Yeah. Money. It's a problem. Because money becomes necessary to finance most of the strategies we have by which we give ourselves relief from our problems, our suffering. With money, I can buy something to drink, something to see, and so forth. Yes, beloved.
You opened with saying that the problem or the lack of knowledge. Could we say that problems are rooted in the knowledge that you have?
Problems is rooted.
The images that determines the human relationship, the image that you have.
That's interesting. We'll try to weave that back in. I like that. But before we take off a little further, I just want to get a sense of what kind of problems that we have as human beings. See, there are problems that are inherent in human existence. I want you to really expand this consideration. What are some of the problems that are just inherent in human existence itself that is universally the case? You, then that young brother in the back.
Okay, physical problems like bodily.
Sickness. Here we're beginning to individualize the nature of our problems. They're personal. And we got a little sense of that, but in the interest of time, and after all, this is Karnak. We deal in Sogai, deep knowledge. So you're going to have to dig deeper here than you ordinarily would have to dig in a college class on philosophy. What are some of the problems that are inherent by virtue of the human condition? Lack of knowledge, yes, but what are some of the problems? A problem, let's say a problem, let's define a problem as being a profound dissatisfaction with some aspect of reality. Let it sink in a minute. You have a problem whenever you are experiencing some aspect of reality that you don't like, that you are dissatisfied with. So we can't talk about problems independent of the nature of reality. Right? Because we all are born into what? Reality. How many problems you have in life will depend on how you respond to what? To reality. And there are some things about reality that becomes problematic for almost all of us. And where I'm trying to move the Sangat, this community of seekers of truth, to is, what is that? Common denominator. Let me get an input from that young brother. Continue, brother.
I was going to say, if we just think of the insufficiency, maybe like having to always come to, having to always just provide for ourselves in our daily lives, food, clothing, shelter. Not just in the sense of money, but in the sense of maintaining daily life.
Right. There's a kind of fundamental stress, isn't it? Inherent in the human condition, isn't it? Is that about right?
Yeah.
Human existence is fundamentally stressful, isn't it? What are the stresses of human existence? Yes, we have to take care of our bodies and get food and all that. What are some of the other things about reality that oftentimes is experienced as a problem for us? Yes, beloved?
Then we're going to die.
Ah. If we really had the time to really peel it all the way down, we come to this. Somewhere in the Bible, in Job, I believe, he writes, a man born of a woman is here for but a few days, full of trouble. What is it about the nature of conditional reality in human existence that makes it so stressful? Yes, Mr. The impermanent nature.
Somebody said, what does that mean?
Impermanence means that nothing lasts forever. What the Buddha call anicca, impermanence. Consider it. In this world, there is simply an endless flow of change, flux, cycles, things arising, durating, and disappearing. Nothing is stable here. Nothing lasts. You see, death in the widest sense of the word, meaning that everything you do comes to an end. Right? Even when you have your favorite meal, the enjoyment you get from that only lasts so long. And so part of the things that is problematic for us when we are not in right relationship with reality. The ancient Africans had a word for that right relationship with reality. They called that ma'at. Please make a note. Ma'at is not just simply some moral, ethical system. It is many Afrocentric scholars would have you believe it's much more profound than that. Ma'at is the ability to be in right relationship with reality, is in harmony with reality, not trying to get around reality by inventing nonsense in your head. And one of the nature of reality is that every experience that you are having is impermanent. Why is that a problem? And how does that become a problem? See the relationship of your personal problems to your failure to be in my heart. This is what is interesting. See? Because ultimately, the solution to all problems is radical understanding. But it must be radical understanding. It can't be just theoretical. Yes, beloved?
What is reality?
That's what we're here to consider. Right. So we have to.
Everyone's reality is different.
Is this weather different for everybody? What is different for everybody is their opinions,
The perception.
their perception. And your perception is dictated by your level of consciousness. This is Sogayin. Is this Sogayin? Your perception is dependent upon your point of view. Where you are at in time and space, and the view you have from that position dictates your conclusion. But even your experiences are interpreted through your belief systems and so forth and so on, which is unique to you. We want to talk about reality, reality. See, reality beyond and independent of your personal opinions and so forth. What is the nature? And that's a profound question, because we got to ask these kind of questions to get into our subject proper. And we, no doubt, are not going to exhaust it here today. So I want to say that up front. I will, however, provide those who are serious about a further investigation with a context to do so. But I certainly wanted to start this kind of conversation because, again, we're not here to pursue ordinary knowledge. This is cardinal. Nature of reality. Talk to me.
Is reality even universal? Is the Ma'atic order even universal for everyone?
Reality must, by definition, be universal. It must transcend all differences. That's what makes it real. Yes, but
I was going to talk about change. She already.
Change.
Another one is when you talk about suffering, really, but not wanting to experience pain is the source of
yeah.
problem. Not wanting to experience it.
That can become the problem. Let me make a
Just
little room.
just not wanting or even believing that you have to experience
The
it.
avoidance of pain. I'm going to torture you all just a little bit longer, and so I can have some fun. And then I'm going to release you from your dilemmas. Because these kind of considerations require much seriousness and much profundity. You follow me? And it will require more time than we set aside. Some of the inherent problems that we tend to have with reality in its collision with human nature is that by human nature, you want to avoid pain, right? You want to always be in a state of comfort. Is that possible? Is that possible? Is it any way to avoid discomfort in life? Right? But if your pursuit in life is the avoidance of discomfort, then you're going to have a lot of what? Problems. Because essentially you're trying to do something that is fundamentally impossible within the context of reality. It is a futile ambition. And in this pursuit of the effort to avoid discomfort, you never prepare yourself to deal with it. You see? Starting at the level of the body, right? We don't want to have a discomfort. In fact, many of our personal problems will fall under this category of problems. Is that about right? That are universal. The avoidance of pain and discomfort. Pain can't be avoided. Pain is a sensual phenomenon. Suffering is optional. Please make the note. There's a distinction between the two. Pain is given. Suffering optional. Suffering is based on how you respond to reality. Please make the note. Does that make sense to you? Suffering is your reaction to reality. It is a kind of contraction, a kind of rebellion against reality. Very good. Yes, sir.
So while reality might be universal, suffering is not. Suffering is individual. Right?
Suffering is individual. You see, suffering is something we do. But because most of us are not in possession of that kind of deep knowledge that these realizer had, these Buddhas, these Patahoteps, the Kajamis, the Kabirs, the Nandu, the Mahaviras, the Lao Tzus, you see, so forth and so on. We don't have that level of understanding. And the absence of that understanding, you have no purport but to suffer because you are living out of ignorance of the way things really are. And that's most of us, you see. And unless we are exposed to a higher kind of education, then we remain stuck in that state of profound existential ignorance. That's why I was saying earlier that Karnak is here to present a very different kind of education, that is not purposed to help you better operate computers. That's fine, but that ain't going to take your dukkha away. You follow me? Yes. And you can become as efficient in math and science as you like. That's not going to help you reduce this suffering. Give me some more. Give me some more. This is good. Am I boring you all? Damn. Go.
My question, you mentioned some names like dukkha. I was just told suffering.
Suffering.
Were those sages?
Sages, yes. These are the sages, the great realizers. You see, the founders of religion. You know, you look at every great religion, has its roots in a realizer. You follow me? In Buddhism, there's a Buddha. You see? In Christianity, there's a Jesus. You follow me? In Jainism, there's first a Mahavira. You see? Many of the Hindus, there's a Krishna. You see? In the African tradition, great sages exist. We don't always have their names anymore. But long before there was a Chetawanatur, a teachers of the God, there was some man, some woman who attained the consciousness of a Tehuti. You see? It's like that, right? And then they become the source of and the dispensers of this knowledge, you see? For the benefit of people like us. Because if you don't have the knowledge, then you're going to simply suffer, you see? So this is one of the categories that most of our problems that we have with reality or in life is that we're trying to avoid that which is uncomfortable. And if you would become sensitive to yourself, become sensitive to your moment-to-moment way of life and living, what you would notice is that you would simply never feeling as good as you want and need to feel. Notice that. Find out what you're up to. See, you got to find out what you're up to. Now, if you look real closely and sensitively at yourself and find yourself out, you will see that you, like everybody else down here, fundamentally what you're up to is you're trying to make yourself feel better. Is that about right? You're trying to make yourself feel better. And you're trying to make yourself feel better by acquiring things that are impermanent. Now, that which is impermanent cannot deliver long-lasting feelings of satisfaction and fulfillment by definition. Are you with me? So you take that, you eat that pizza to make yourself feel better. But the effects of eating that pizza are impermanent. Anika is the Buddha called it. It is impermanent. It's transient. It's not going to last. All right? And then again, after a bowel movement or 4 hours later, you're again feeling bad. Are you with me? Give me another kind of category that pretty much encompasses all of us. Yes, brother.
Blame and act fit into that.
Blaming, and that comes down the road because blaming is a part of your reaction to the realities of life. You follow me? You blaming and you complaining. Most people you see that's doing a lot of blaming and complaining are people who are most out of touch with reality. They're blaming and they're complaining, thinking that they're blaming and complaining is going to change reality. Their blaming and their complaining is a way that they relieve themselves, you see, of that suffering, that stress. We're going to get into that a little bit more. Give I'm looking for another kind of universal aspect of reality that very often serves as the basis for a lot of our problems. Guess what it answers then? Fear. I'm going to put fear here because actually fear is the source and the root of all of it. And again, you look at this fear is the basis of the stress. We're stressed because of fear. You have to begin to appreciate the relationship between your stress and your fear. This fear is the basis of stress. All of this will hopefully make sense as we get a little further in. And again, I apologize for kind of glossing this thing here. But I wanted to get something on the table for you to consider. And then perhaps somewhere down the road we get together and we get down to some real substance. So we'll come back to this. Let me quiz you a little bit more, then let's fill this out and move on. Yes,
Not being able to get your way.
not being able to get your way, yeah, that creates a lot of fear. And you're afraid that you're not going to be able to get your way. That fear of not being able to get your way is usually what produces your anger. Fundamentally, anger is simply your emotional response to not being able to get your way. And get your way really means control. Is that about right? To control your objective experience, right? Now look at that. You want to control your outer condition, your objective condition. Is that about right? Because your presumption is that my inner well-being is dependent upon my outer condition. Is that about right? That's the fundamental presumption that is made by people who don't possess sogai. Right? And so what you will do in that moment, you will try to manipulate your outer condition. Right? People, places, circumstances, things. There's 7 billion people down here. How are you going to control all of that? You can't. You follow me? And failing to be unable to control people, places, things, circumstances, events, and get your way, because in order to get your way, you got to control something. Is that about right? You got it, right? And since you can't control 7 billion people, right? Usually you're going to have a lot of experience of not getting your way, which means you're probably going to have a lot of anger, right? Anger is another form of dukkha. It is a suffering. You follow me? Yes, beloved.
Discontent.
All in here? Yeah. Discontent is with what? What's the object of discontent? You see? We have discontent, you're absolutely right, but what are the objects of your discontent?
The perception of your reality.
Right. And I like your word, your perception of reality, because the presumption is that how we perceive in reality is the way reality is. Now, most of us, especially those of us who is without sogai, you're not perceiving reality the way it is. You see, you have what the Buddha called a wrong view. You see, you are imagining reality to be that way. You see? Even in physics, we understand that. You see, your physical senses, seeing, touching, tasting, feeling, smelling, your senses that's in this body cannot represent reality the way it is. You see? This looks like a body, solid form. This is just a play of lights here. You follow what I'm saying? Quartz, strings, atoms, circulating. You follow me? The seat you're sitting on feels solid. You follow what I'm saying? That's just a few molecules there. The rest is empty space. Your body too solid to feel it. You follow what I'm saying? Your senses create an optical illusion. Are you with me? You look at the sky, your senses will tell you the sky is blue. The sky is not blue. You see, you walk on the ground, your senses will tell you that this is flat. The earth is flat. The earth is not flat. You follow me? So the kind of perception of reality that you can have via your physical senses is what we call naive. It ain't the way it is. You see? So forth and so on. Let's move a little bit more, because we're going to save plenty of time for interaction, because I think the interaction is better. I don't want to just stand here and lecture, but I wanted to say a few things so that you could begin to understand the different kind of education that is being made available to you at Carlock. This is extraordinary. This hasn't happened in millennia. You follow me? This is very different. It deals with your human condition. It's not entertainment. You follow me? It's not even purpose to make you feel better. You see? It's purpose to awaken you, to open that eye of heaven so that you can see it as it is, and then get into my outward reality and bring your problems and your suffering to an end. It's a very different phenomenon. Let's look at another one. I was saying, had I bored you yet? Trying my best. Boredom is another kind of universal class in which a lot of our problems could be subsumed. Boredom. Just boredom. Have you noticed that? Again, remember I said earlier that you're always trying to make yourself feel better emotionally. That's because you're trying to avoid boredom. Boredom doesn't feel good, does it? Suffering is. You get bored. Fundamentally. Is that about right? Boredom is one of our problems.
Loneliness go along with
Yeah, you got it, my friend. Hey, loneliness. And out of that boredom and loneliness, you move into a relationship, right? Fundamentally, the motivation that moves you into the relationship is to relieve yourself from this boredom and the loneliness that is inherent in boredom. Is that about right? So you go get married, right? And you relieve of your boredom for about 6 months. After that, is right. Now you're bored with the person you with. You follow what I'm saying? The relief is temporary, you see? Boredom is one of our biggest problems, how to handle our boredom. That's a problem. You know, what should I do? What can I do? I mean, you have to come up with all kinds of interests in this and interests in that, you see. You have to come up with all kinds of stimulation strategies. And some of those strategies we use to stimulate ourselves become stimulation addictions. We got to do that to keep ward off boredom. You follow me? A lot of drinking, drugging. You follow me? TV, man. Yeah, you got to turn that damn TV on. You know, you're not even watching the TV, just the idea of having it on comforts you. Boredom. That's a problem. See, this is inherent. See, in life, there will be discomfort for everybody. Nobody can avoid that. That's a feature and quality of conditional reality in human existence. You will not avoid that. You see, you're not always going to be able to maintain a level of comfort at the level of your body, your emotions, and your mind. That's not reality. That's fantasy. You see, one of the first things you got to understand, this ain't Disney World. This ain't Disney World. You're not in Disney World here, right? And this is not utopia. You follow me? And you're not going to live happily ever after. That's in TV land, right? This is the reality of where you're at. You got to understand your real condition that you are really in, and not replace that with your imagination of the condition that you really in. You have to see it as it really is, and then get in my heart. So boredom, and we can talk about those as we go along. We've already talked about the other one, doubt. Because that's what the absence of knowledge produces in you is doubt. Is that about right? Doubt is a sign of the absence of knowledge. Hence, you want to seek knowledge. You're trying to figure it out. You see, doubt and confusion. Because you're trying to figure out this thing. You know, you're trying to figure out what is all of this that I find myself in. What is this place? How I get here? Where I'm going? You see my point? What is all of this? There's this human effort to try to figure out what's going on. You know, like Marvin Gaye, you saying what's going on here? That's us all our song. You're trying to figure out what's going on here. You know, why is all this stuff happening? To my loved ones, to me. Why did mama die? Why did daddy die? Why did I lose my job? You see my point? Why? You're trying to figure out the human condition. You see? That enterprise becomes philosophy, psychology, and so forth and so on. You create all kinds of beliefs about it to console your suffering from doubt and confusion. Basically. So doubt is a kind of reality here, because the reality is that you're not going to figure this out. How would your little finite mind figure out this? That's not going to happen. You're never going to figure it out. Ever. And this constant seeking to find the answers that are way beyond your mind and intellect creates stress. Fear and stress. Remember these two things. Discomfort, boredom, doubt. What's the next one? What do you think the next one is? I'm just thinking along with it. Come on, black people.
Violence,
What is it?
violence,
Violence?
triggered by, the fear and the anger.
In some sense, but I'm looking for something else. Torturing you.
Control.
Control.
About responsibility.
Responsibility. Not quite. Well, are you long-time philosophers and all you yogis and meditators, PhDs, heavy people? You know, you say how heavy you are. Come on, come on. What's up with all that?
Don't accept that?
Non-acceptance? Change. Well, we're not going to slay you. The key is over here is anxiety. Your anxiety. Fear. That low grade of fear that is always there's an undercurrent, always going on. Fear. Because that is a natural response to this great mystery. You don't know what's going to happen here. Right? And anything can happen to you. Right? We mentioned death, right, as being one of the core and foundation of these kind of anxiety, existential anxiety. And the thing about that is that when you know that that which you call me is mortal and going to die, that very knowing has become the basis of anxiety, fear, and stress. Don't you think? The biggest problem in life, not its vicissitudes, the biggest problem, you're going to die. Fundamentally. And that produces a continuous low-grade anxiety. You're going to die. It's the problem of all problems. And the ancestors in all spiritual traditions, therefore, focus on how to deal with that reality. You see my point? You deal with that reality. That's reality. That's the problem. Deal with that. And then all other problems fade into insignificance. Don't you think? So with that rather long introduction to our topic today, I want to now start filling in the blanks and getting into the details. And looking into the process by which these kinds of problems of human existence can be overcome, to be transcended. That's the whole purpose of the spiritual process. So, again, let's open up the floor and let's talk and have a little bit of a practical conversation here. And deal with these problems. Who will be the first to throw the stone?
Well, we talked about the discomfort bothering and how we try to avoid that. Would it be true to say that there's a psychological discomfort that's always there, that anxiety, and that we try to avoid that as well, and in doing so, we cause problems for ourselves. We cause our own suffering.
Yes, in some sense there's a cycle. Because this comfort zone is the body, at the level of the body, emotions, and let's just say mental. And one of the principal strategies that we use by which we relieve ourselves of the discomfort at the level of the body, the stress, you see, is self-indulgence. That's the principle. We self-indulge. You see, self-indulgence basically would consist of, getting us some money to get us some food, sex. You know what I mean? Drinking drugs. That's about it. That becomes a strategy. Now, the problem with that is that whatever you use to indulge yourself with is impermanent. By definition, is that about right? So whatever relief you get at the level of your body-based stress in the face of the nature of reality is limited, transient. And always suffer from diminishing returns. So you got to drink more, sex up more, have more drugs. Follow? Get more money, to get more food, sex, drugs, something to drink. You see, self-indulgence becomes one of the principal strategies that we use. What are some of the strategies we might resort to? Have you observed others? Because, again, remember, nobody in here got problems, so we just want to talk about them folks outside of here. But what are some of the other kind of strategies that we resort to deal with our emotions?
Yes.
To relieve that order.
That's where relationships can come in. Using other people as a source of relieving our emotional suffering. Relationships can really come in there.
In fact, most of our motivation to enter into a relationship is grounded in our search for some other human being that will be as committed to our own self-gratification, self-aggrandizement, and relieving us from our boredom as we are. Now, the problem with that in reality is that you're never going to find another human being on this planet who will be as committed to your egoity and your commitment to the pursuit of self-gratification and self-aggrandizement. No such human being exists. None. Not understanding that, you see. You set yourself up for a lot of suffering. Because you get into this relationship and you expect that person to be the source of the ending of your suffering. That don't happen. In fact, it's even too much of a burden to put on another.
Yes.
Don't you agree? One of the corollary truths based on the reality of impermanence is the fact that there's nothing you're going to do outside in your outer condition that's going to result in happiness. Now, this is the most difficult part of the teachings about reality for us to accept. It requires a complete thought shift. It goes against all of our conditioning and our belief system. Because we were convinced that the source of happiness is in how we accommodate people, circumstances, and situations in our outer life. That's not true. That can never happen. See? But under this ignorance of reality, and again, guys, remember, what is ignorance?
Lack of knowledge.
Well, not more than lack of, it's a kind of lack of knowledge of reality. It is the ignorance of reality. That's ignorance. Fundamental. Ignorance is not my inability to do math. You know what I mean? Ignorance is my ignorance of reality. That's ignorance. You see? That's ignorance. And ignorance is the inability to discern the distinction between what is real and what is unreal, between what is false and what is true. Ignorance is the inability to discern the distinction between what is important in life and what is just pure bullshit. Fundamentally, that's it. Ignorance of reality. So, coming back to this emotions, boredom, so forth and so on. What is the kind of universal strategy we all tend to resort to for purposes of relieving ourselves from boredom?
Fantasy.
Yeah, fantasy. You can definitely a lot of fantasy. But who's saying entertainment? Yeah, entertainment. Distraction. You got to distract yourself from reality. Is that about right? Sure. These are problems. These are the existential problems of life that every human being are confronted with. And therefore they could act as a kind of test of life for all of us, irregardless. Don't you think? And how do we relieve our mental discomfort? And remember, I said that this mental discomfort is manifest in the form of doubt and confusion, the inability to figure all this out. You follow what I'm saying? Ignorance is not a comfortable state to be in. You know, a state of ignorance is uncomfortable. You know, we need to know. You know, I need to know what's going on so I can control what's going on. You see my point? So there's that impulse to know for the purpose of controlling. And when I don't have such knowledge, that's uncomfortable. You see? It's uncomfortable. And how do I relieve myself from that? Well, we have things like religion, beliefs, science. All of those things are ways of us constructing certain beliefs about the nature of reality, purposely designed by us to relieve our own. You see my point? So I say, well, I know that when I die, you know what I mean? I'm going to heaven. And you get a little relief from that. You understand what I'm saying? By believing in that. And I'm not mocking religions and things of that nature, but you need to understand its function. You see? Or science. You know what I mean? The new religion. You follow what I'm saying? Give you a lot of scientific beliefs. Well, you know, they're going to have some kind of way to freeze my body and then they'll resurrect me. You know what I mean? Give me one of those policies that'll save my head and they'll make me. I mean, you understand what I'm saying? More nonsense. You see? But a belief, because the reality, you don't know what's going to happen. And you can't live in that vacuum of unknowing. So you got to fill it with some belief system, philosophy. You know what I mean? Actually, originally, you see, philosophy was the study of death. Interesting. It has moved far away from that in these modern times. But philosophy was a discipline engaged in purposely to deal with the reality of your mortality. You see. It didn't become semantics until Wittgenstein came. You know, now it's just an analysis of language and blah, blah, blah. Having nothing to do with the great challenge that we all confronted. So, yes, you were saying that this discomfort can be experienced on all three levels. See, what you got to do to get something out of this, you got to start introspecting yourself. Right? See, again, this is not purposed to be a kind of class and social analysis. You know what I'm saying? You need to be sitting your life in the palm of your hand, looking at it. Because you, like every other human being, are confronted with this reality. There's not a different reality out for any of us, right? Problem is you're going to grow, you're going to get sick, and ultimately you're going to die. That's the problem. And you're going to lose everyone and everything in your life. And they're going to lose you. That's reality. Not just what you concocted in your imagination somewhere. That's reality. And if you don't deal with it, then you're going to have some problems. You have problems because you haven't dealt with it.
So how do you deal with it? Do we just have to...
That's the question now, right? But I want to make sure everybody convinced we got these problems. Now get out of denial. Follow what I'm saying? Get out of denial. Denial is not useful. Right? Drop egos. Then we can move into addressing that issue. How do we deal with that? The process. Now this is going to be simpler than you think. I know you get ready for some long, profound, complicated process. No, this is going to be real simple because we don't have to reinvent the wheel. Follow me? The means by which we can bring our dukkha, our suffering, our problems to an end, has been worked out by these great realizers for millennia. To put it in two simple words, know thyself. This was written across all of the Greek academies. It was written in Karnak. Know yourself. Simple, but utterly profound. The first thing about the process of knowing thyself, because that's the heart of every spiritual process. It's simply about that. It's knowing yourself. Knowing yourself is what creates heaven on earth. It is what creates a condition that is like heaven. Knowing yourself is the panacea by which all problems are transcended. You follow what I'm saying? Knowledge of self is what enables you to endure that which is difficult to endure. Knowledge of self is the means, is the process. Now we'll unpack that. Now the realizers, the seers, those architects of that which was much greater than the pyramids, much greater than the Sphinx. That's little stuff. Small potatoes. See, something built to entertain the public. You know what I mean? But to become transformed into an Osiris, just marvel at the pyramids. You marvel at these people are gods. That's what you marvel at. Pyramids is a little thing. You gotta appreciate the consciousness that can create a pyramid. That's what's important. You know what I mean? So the presumption is that you don't know yourself. That's what's always is difficult in being able to absorb that esoteric knowledge that these great realizers come to share with us for the sake of liberating us from our sorrow and suffering. It's difficult to accept. If they're telling you know yourself, that don't sit right because you're assuming that you are who you think you are, right?
Yes.
Is that about right?
Yes, sir.
And that is what must begin to get investigated. So the first thing is to find out whether you really know yourself or not. Are you really who you think you are and what you are? This know thyself process, this knowing thyself, makes some very radical propositions about the nature of your true self. First thing they tell you, because you say, notice the way you say, I know myself. Who are you? Well, I'm a man, I'm a woman, I'm this person, I'm that person. You will make reference back to your body, your history, your biography, and things like that. And say, no, that's not who you are. You see? And then that argument goes back and forth, but maybe over time you get worn down and you begin to consider the argument. They say, no, you haven't inspected the nature of your own very being. You see? That's superficial. So I understand. Many more are simply convinced they are who they've been told they are, who your mama told you you are, your daddy, who society. You are who somebody told you you are. No. You're not who somebody told you you are. The people who are telling you who you are don't know who they are. That should be suspect to you. All right? About right? No? See, this is the foundation of that radical transformation of one's fundamental sense of self and who they are. They tell you that, okay, first and foremost, they knock out all of those references to your sense of who you are. They say you're not the body. You're not the mind. You are only consciousness itself. What depends on the culture you're in. Some would say you soul, spirit, etc. But definitely not this body mind. You see? That's the proposition that's put to you. Whether you can process that, embrace that, understand it, comprehend it, will determine whether you will succeed on the spiritual path or not. Fundamental. See? Fundamental. You don't know yourself. And knowledge of self is the highest knowledge. If you don't know who you are, fundamentally you're ignorant. And you will suffer. Now try to appreciate this. Ego, the problem they tell you is your ego. Your ego is what keeps you from knowing who you are. And ego is this false sense of self. But as long as you remain identified with this false sense of self, you cannot, by definition, come into the recognition of your true self. Are you following my argument? This false sense of self, this ego self, the ego mind. And what is this false sense of self made out of? It is made out of the conclusion that you have come to about yourself. It is made out of what they call your so-called self-esteem. It's also made out of your condition, what your mom and daddy told you about yourself. You follow me? A lot of it is just pure myth, just stuff you make up about yourself. You see my point? Qualities, characteristics, and virtues that you arrogate to yourself for the sake of impressing other people, but in reality, you do not possess. That's what we find out about each other when we enter into the spiritual ordeal that is marriage. We find out all that stuff we were telling each other about dating, none of that stuff was true. You see my point? Just rhetoric, propaganda, stuff you invented. How you want to be, not how you are. You follow me? Ego is this false sense of identification. You see, that's a kind of psychological definition of ego. And so the process means that you got to break your identification with your body-mind. And in order to overcome your identification with the body-mind, you have to overcome your ego, this false sense of self, based on your identification with the body-mind. Now the question is, why is that so important? Right? Now think about it. What were some of the bases of our problems with human existence? We said that it was one of the fundamental ones that we're going to die, right? But what dies? But what if you're not the body? Then do you have any problem with the body dying? What if you're not the mind? Do you have any problem with this condition? The problem then, beloveds, is the fact that we don't live as being consciousness itself. We live as if we are only this body, mind, feelings, and the biography associated with it. And because we do not live as being only consciousness itself, we subject ourselves to all of this turmoil and trepidation. The problem is that we are unenlightened in regard to our true self. And the realization of one's self is the only means by which one will bring all problems to an end. This is a radical proposition, but it is a proposition that has been made since time immemorial, cutting across all cultures. You'll find it at the heart of every great religion, every great spiritual tradition. They all are saying the same thing in their own ways. You've got to wake up and you've got to know yourself. And not in a kind of historical, superficial way. Are you with me? I'm not talking about the historical self, right? The divine self. So this becomes the process, the foundation of the process. Any questions about that? Because I want to get a few more shocks in here before time is up.
I have a question.
Yes, but
So when the consciousness goes, when the body goes away, what happens to the consciousness?
the consciousness. Yeah, now I love that question. You see, the consciousness don't move. Consciousness is the context in which all your experiences are arising. Consciousness is the context of the experiences. Experiences is what come and go, not consciousness. Because consciousness is prior to time and space. You follow me? That which is moving in time and space is subject to impermanence and change. But you are always only consciousness itself. If you get quiet in this moment and get sensitive to yourself, you will notice that there is something in you that is aware of our conversation, aware of what we are saying to one another, hearing it, but itself is not talking at all. See? There's something in you that is aware when you become bored and angry, but itself is never bored and angry. Tatwamasi, thou art that. it was aware when you were a little boy, a little girl, it was aware of you. But itself was never a child. Pure awareness. That's what you are. That is what you must come to recognize. In the Chabad spiritual tradition, they're called it pratyabhijanata, the recognition of self as only consciousness itself. And when your identification of who you are shifts back to it, when you recover this sense of self, true self, you see, then what is the problem? You see, bodies come and go. Minds come and go. Just like you're not afraid to go to sleep. Are you afraid to? Well, maybe some of you are afraid.
You go to sleep a lot of times.
But, you know, you go to sleep, you're not terrified because you don't disappear. You follow what I'm saying? But notice in your sleep, there's no identification with your ego. This ego only arises in your waking state. Have you noticed? When you are in a deep, dreamless sleep, there is no identification with this body. Do you cease to exist? And when you really look at it, because these are the three fundamental modes that you experience. Wakefulness, sleep with dreams, and then deep, dreamless sleep. And you can inspect those. And you'll find that in this waking state, you see, the Jagrata state, that's the state that you have all these problems. You know what I mean? Because of your identification with your body and mind. You see? Since you call this me, you become totally preoccupied with this body and mind. What they doing to me? I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. You become self-possessed, egoic, selfish. You follow what I'm saying? All about me. You follow me? But when you go into a dream state, for instance, there may be a dream body, but sometimes that dream body is a bird. In the dream, you're a damn bird. You know what I mean? You're not, in any case, this thing, you see. And you're watching. You notice in the dream state there's more of a witnessing type of thing? Have you noticed that? That witnessing self that is watching the dream, watching yourself in the dream. Is that about right? Stay with me now. Look into your dream. You see, in your dream state, very often there's a little distance. It is like you are witnessing what you are doing in the dream, right? Seem to be two birds, right? And both of them are you, right? And from there, you can go down into deep dreamless sleep, or Suzuki, right? And there's no you at all. And then you say, well, for one, I cease to exist. No, something was there to know that you didn't dream about anything. How could you know you had no dreams unless there was some consciousness that none was happening? Are you with me? Consciousness is always already the case. Good thing about it, you don't have to do nothing to be conscious. You know what I'm saying? You don't have to think yourself into a state of consciousness at all. It simply always already is the case. One, the elimination of drugs. I can get rid of drugs. You know what I mean? Alcohol and any mind-altering substance, because, you know, you're trying to go beyond mind, you see. You're trying to get a clear mind. You're going to have to, first you got to get your, it's almost like Jacob's ladder. First you got to get straight at the level of the body. Then you got to get straight at the level of your emotions. Then you got to get straight at the level of your mind. And then there's that possibility for you to recover the experience of your true self. But you got to get straight here. You see my point? That might involve dietary practices, so forth and so on, depending on which spiritual tradition you're going to. Emotions, you got to get rid of all of the negative emotions. Anger, lust, greed, and passion. You see, the so-called moral life has to become the case, so forth and so on. All of this is work. The mind, you got to train your attention. The key component in this process then is what you do with your attention. It's what you do with your attention. Because think about it. All experiences that you have require you paying attention. Without attention, you have no experience. Your experience is where your attention goes. Are you with me? So the training of attention, that becomes meditation. That's the domain of meditation. So meditation becomes a key component in the sadhana that ultimately results in the recognition of your true self. A few more things to be said here. Attitudes have to change as well. Instead of you spending all this time, energy, and attention trying to manipulate your outer conditions for the sake of being happy and relieved of stress and so forth and so on, you have to reverse that process, right? And start working on your inner conditions. You see, somebody's sinning out there. The ancestors in the room, so I'll be careful of lying, because I'll be lying. Think about it. Your experiences fundamentally occur inside you. You are experiencing all of this inside. The domain, the spiritual domain to work on is inside. And the energy now is focused on how would you like to be inside yourself. Consider it. What would you like your inner condition to be like? Because you're not in control of your outer condition. Is that pretty clear? You ain't in control of this. You see? You ain't running nothing out here. You know what I'm saying? There's something else that is in control of what's going on in your objective sphere of experience. Call it whatever you like. You know what I mean? Hardly matters. What's significant to note is that it ain't you. You're not in control of what's happening now in the objective sphere at all. In fact, it's when you really experience not being in control that your ego rises. Because the ego wants to be in control. Have you noticed? Because by being in control, I can protect myself from the vicissitudes of life, from those things about reality that I don't like. I can protect myself. If only I had enough control. Well, this is futile. You know what I'm saying? Your ego is not going to protect the body from dying. Come on. It's not going to protect the body from getting old and sick. It's not going to protect you from becoming feeble-minded. Ego is impotent. You follow me? It just don't know it. So the question, beloved, is what would you like your inner condition to be like? That you have some control over. How you react to reality determines the quality of your inner life, your inner condition. In some sense, you see, on the way to this enlightenment, and this is what enlightenment really is. You see, enlightenment is not siddhas and superpowers and, you know, being objects with your mind and have astral trips out of your body. And, you know, that's mediocre. Enlightenment is the recovery of the recognition of your true nature itself. It is the only consciousness of self. And with the recovery of that recognition, there's a profound freedom and liberation. And your whole inner condition changes. Follow me? You're able to maintain your mind in a state of peace. And that's what it's all about, isn't it? problem is, go ahead, dear.
What is your consciousness? Because your experience goes into your consciousness and then they're replaced.
Consciousness is the context. You know, like this room is the context where we're having this meeting. Right? Consciousness is the context. Consciousness is that is aware of what's going on. You see, before you can have any experience, you must be first what? Come on, say it. Before you can have any experience, what must you be first?
Alive.
Where?
Well, being alive is an experience. So what must you be before you can have any experience? Conscious. Consciousness itself is prior to all these things. And I know that this may take a minute because I said this is so Ga'i, this is different. This is, this is very different. It's easier to understand quantum mechanics or something like that than it is to understand this. This is so Ga'i, this is profound. That is why many of these great realizers hesitated to teach it. In the ancient Kemetic mystery school, very few were admitted because they knew that this thing is so deep, so profound. You see? Who will understand it? You see? There wasn't that great motivation to teach it. It was just like in the days of the Buddha. The Buddha says, this Dharma that I'm teaching is so deep, so gaber, so profound. Nobody's going to understand it, and I'm not going to waste time teaching it. Well, something like that has always been a part of every great tradition because this is really profound. And to grasp it requires much seriousness and much profundity. So you have to become serious about having peace of mind. And you got to become serious or made serious about being happy. Most of us are not happy because you're not serious about being happy. You're too casual about it. You're not willing to put in the work. You follow me? So you must become serious about all of this. You see? After all, what's the point of this human existence? Have you ever considered that? What's the point?
What is the point?
I'm asking you. Yes. You got that answer deep down inside. You just got to gather the courage to go get it. You see? When you look, that's one of the things that confronts every human being. You're trying to figure out what's the point of all of this, right? Night and day, you're trying to figure out what's the point. You're born, you live a few days, and then that's it. What's the point? Is the point of human existence to pay off your mortgage and credit card bill? What's the point? We're going to care about that. You follow what I'm saying? I'm not advocating being irresponsible. I'm saying, what's the point of all of this? Maybe the point of human existence is to be happy. Maybe the point of human existence is to have peace of mind. Maybe the point is to know thyself. Maybe that's the point. I don't know. Explore that. Find that out. But certainly you must ask yourself, is the way you live it, is that the point of life? What you're doing with your life, is that really the point of life? This mere pathological pursuit of your own self-gratification and self-aggrandizement, your own self-glorification, right? Is that the point of life? Consider it. So you must consider these matters, most profoundly. And that is what is required for the spiritual process to know yourself. You see? It requires great capacity to be ruthlessly honest with yourself. You see, beloved, there are truths about ourselves that we don't want to tell ourselves. Truths about ourselves that we hide from ourselves. One of them is that, we pretend like we all happy and stuff. You know you ain't happy. Who you kidding? You follow what I'm saying? It's just a pretense. You follow what I'm saying? It's just a show you're putting on. It's an act that you're putting on. You follow me? I ain't scared. Yes, you are scared. Your whole life is based on fear. You follow what I'm saying? Fear of me not getting my way. Fear of somebody taking something from me. You see, fear of extreme suffering. You see? Right? Because you know anything, you can get killed in any minute here, you know. All kinds of suffering can happen to you, just like that. You know that. So there's that fear there, you know. But we walk around pretending we fear this, that. That's not true. It's all in that. We have to acknowledge our true condition. That becomes the motivation for transforming it. Otherwise, what's the motivation to transform? So it requires a great deal of honesty to really break free of the gravity of our ego, you see, and come into an authentic life and really deal with these things, you see.
Question?
Yes, brother.
How does rejection become a mindset?
The rejection?
Where life is,
expand a little bit.
life is filtered through rejection.
Expand that a little bit more for me.
Well, you're so afraid of a situation where you don't even bother to try.
Yeah.
Because to try is to fail.
Absolutely. And see, that's getting into the psychology of problems. You see, because we've been looking at it from the spiritual level coming down. Now that's at the psychological level. And people begin to develop a psychology of problems. You see, a mindset. And that problem mindset very often lacks vision of what is possible. You follow me? And so it says that this is impossible. Therefore, I won't try it. Rejection, the fear of rejection, is based on your identification with what? Who you think you are. Is that about right? It's ego-based. You won't have a fear of rejection without there first being this ego. You see? It's ego. They won't like the way I look. Well, who give a damn? Ain't nobody know it. You see my point? It's no problem. See my point? But where you are identified is going to determine how you live. See, there's a lot more to this, and I'm hoping that, of course, we can't make every car knock focus on these kind of things. Therefore, I've set up contexts parallel to Karnak, because this is so naive, and this is going to take a minute. This you're not going to get in a weekend lecture. You see, you're going to have to put in more work than that. But it's good work if you can get it, and it will change your life. So this fear of rejection is an ego-based fear, very often rooted in vanity. Remember I was saying that the sadhana required you to get straight in all these areas? Well, vanity is very much an outcome of an outgrowth of our ego. Vanity is the presumption of being perfect. Vanity is a kind of delusion we suffer from. Okay. Vanity very often houses the belief we have about ourselves. Now, what you were talking about, beloved, is based on the beliefs we have about ourselves. This has to look, you have to look into this. What do you believe about yourself, besides the fact that you're the body, mind, and so forth and so on? You know, you also have certain beliefs about that self, that body, mind, self. What are your beliefs about yourself? A lot of the beliefs we have about ourselves has been inherited from our parenting, isn't it? You're a smart little girl. You're a bad little boy. You ain't going to be nothing like your daddy, and so forth and so on. We internalize these beliefs about ourselves, right? Our beliefs about ourselves determines what we feel is possible for our life. What's possible for your life, according to you, is going to be driven by and based on your beliefs about yourself. Are you with me? And if you look at your life carefully, if you look at it very carefully, your life is exactly the outcome of what you believe was possible for you. That's so naive. Your life is exactly how it is based on your beliefs about yourself and what you felt was possible for you. So you never went to finish your school because you didn't believe it was possible. You never started a business because you believed it was not possible. You never got married is because you thought it's not possible. You know what I'm saying? Forget what's on the surface. That's just rhetoric talking. Yeah, I want to do this. I want to do that. You know, that's just talking. You know what I mean? That's just social misrepresentation of yourself. It's basically what you believe is possible about yourself. So now you got to look into all of this because this ego and ignorance of self is much more profound than the mere identification with your body mind. It's an identification with your beliefs about yourself and a whole lot of other things. But you got to inspect them. Now, what if it says that I believe that nobody loves me? I'm not loved, right? That's self-contempt. There's a lot of that, right? There's people who feel that they are worthless, see? And nobody would love them, right? And because they believe that about themselves, see, they would not even make the attempt to move into a relationship, right? Because all they're going to do is reject me anyway. Or as you were saying, a fear of rejection. Very often the fear of rejection is because you're too dependent on other people for your sense of worth and value. You're scared. You know what I mean? You're scared. Your ego is so fragile. You can't handle criticism. It will destroy your fantasy about yourself. It gets very deep. Yes, Alonzo, you can have the last question. Just
so what state of mind is comatose? And can you...
Comatose. You know, I have Christina, we have a segment built into our rite of passage for coma, right? Let me tell Alonzo, you come to Clemente, we'll get you straight on that. Here's what a comatose state is. And I'm just going to start with an elementary response to that. You're in a coma to the degree that you don't realize the consequences of my actions. To that degree, you are in a state of coma. Consequences of one's actions. See, there's karma. The mystics, saints say in the West, you shall reap what you what? Right. When you are operating as if there is no consequences of your action, that's a sign that you're almost in a coma a comatose state. You know? Because it's so clear.
Dream state, though. Like, can you reach non-dream state through meditation?
You reach a non-dream state automatically every cycle, every night.
You just don't know. Because it seems like I'm always dreaming, because I don't remember the non-dream state.
Yes, you do. Otherwise, you couldn't say I didn't dream.
Say that again.
So your question was not about coma. Your question was about consciousness in this various form. You see,
the non-dream state is where you want to be.
Right. Now, that's an insight. What you really rather be, more than anything, is asleep. Because when you're asleep, there's no mind. So think about it. When you wake up, your mind goes into a perpetual state of thinking. Think. And what are you always thinking about? How to protect myself. How to avoid those aspects of reality that I don't want to happen to me. How can I avoid, pain, sorrow, sickness? How can I make people do what I want? You're constantly thinking. You see, that thinking is stress-based. If you respect your normal, ordinary way of thinking, you'll find underneath that's stress. You follow me? Fear and stress is driving how you think. So you're always thinking, how can I make myself feel better? How can I make myself feel better? What am I going to eat tomorrow? What am I going to eat next day? You know what I mean? You're all out of the That's stressful. That wears you out. When you go into susupti, or deep dreamless sleep, there's no mind activity. Mind shuts down. Are you with me? Or it doesn't shut down. Attention withdraws beyond the mind. It goes past the mind. And whenever your attention it's free of the mind, the experience is peace. Bliss. You won't ever find peace of mind in a mind.
Right. You can get rid of the mind.
Never.
Yeah.
Can't be done. Peace of mind never occurs in the mind. It occurs beyond the mind. And we all get a taste of that every night when you fall into deep dreamless sleep. It feels so good. And you would notice, nobody wants to get up out of that. You understand? Man, we let it down. I don't want to get up. You don't want to leave that state of consciousness.
Can you force yourself into that?
Oh, yeah, you are forced into it because, you know,
Everybody's going to sleep.
and you think what you're looking for is out at the work site, you see? But naturally, when we fall into that state of consciousness, susut, you don't want to be that state. It feels so good. So you have to be right on something. That is what we want. So that is possible. Now that's the spiritual process gives you that experience while wide awake. Let me put this up here because you asked about meditation, sadhana, the spiritual process, so forth and so on. So there's Jagrata, or the waking state, right? Then there's Swapna, the dream. Then there's Susupti, dreamless, right? And then there is the fourth state. Almost nobody gets there. You see, nature gives you access to this. You got to work to get to the next one. It's called Turiya. Turiya, the fourth state, right? In this state, right, there is this peace that you experience in deep dreamlessly, except you are conscious. You're actually able to, how do I put it? The experience you have here in the Turiya state, you're able to carry it throughout all your other experiences. You see, you are able to abide in a state of peace, even with the mind running. You follow me? Even with the body moving.
Clean the body, clean the mind, clean the...
You got to go deeper. You see, the journey is made with your attention. Your attention is what makes the journey through meditation. So if you can't pull your attention out of your body, beyond your body, then beyond your emotions and beyond your mind, you can't get here. But once you're able to get here, you see, coming down is simple. You follow what I'm saying? It's going up here that is hard, right? Because here you have the experience and that don't go nowhere. It persists across all other modes. But to get there, you got to deal with your attention. Meditation is a way of training your attention so that you can have this experience. You see? So deep sleep is nothing but the radical interiorization of your attention to the point there's no dreaming, there's no mind. And that feels good. And all of us, regardless of our individuality, we all are impulsed to seek peace. Problem is, you're trying to find peace in the waking state. You're not going to find peace in the waking state. It does not exist.
Doc, would you say that journey is similar to the journey of attaining patience? Because patience is not something someone else can teach you.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to go through something and make a choice.
Yes.
And that maturation happens as a result of that choice.
Of that choice.
Then you find yourself passing through different stages of patience.
Absolutely.
To the point of stoicism.
Absolutely. And in fact, I'll tell you a secret. And it's 5 o'clock, so those who I fail to interest, you may leave. The truth of the matter is that when you begin to embark upon this process of really coming into peace, you know, and peace is always the prize, because you'll notice in all cultures we talk about peace. Hotep means what? Peace. Shalom Aleichem. Peace. Assalamu Alaikum. Peace. Namaste. Peace. Peace. But peace is an experience that you have beyond thinking. And to have any experience, you need attention. And exactly as you say, once you make that choice to get serious about having peace, because nothing happens until you get serious. The spiritual path, the path to peace, the path to happiness has never been made available to superficial people. It's not for them. For them, you have conventional institutional religions and philosophy and that kind of thing. You see? This is not for them. You follow what I'm saying? This is the way of the warrior. This takes courage. This is for the tough people. But if you got that kind of seriousness, if you realize that the point of life is that if I'm not happy and find peace, what's the point? Nobody's going to give a damn about you paying your mortgage. Who cares about that? You follow what I'm saying? Nothing. You see? And when you drop dead, you're not going to be celebrated, you see, for more than a couple of years. You see, you're going to be a picture. Most of us are going to be a picture on a mirror. That's it. What will you devote your lifetime to? Is to become submissive, right? No fooling, no kidding now. You follow me? So when you make that decision, beloved, now you're going to have to develop some real patience, some real tolerance. Now all of those things that we talked about before, you're going to have to go through boredom like you've never seen before, you see? The spiritual path will require you to encounter boredom and discomfort. Sitting in meditation for 3 or 4 hours, that don't feel good, you see? People say they want to be spiritual until they hit that process. Then they find out they don't want to be that spiritual. When they require now to transcend those negative states of mind, you see, where they're required now to cultivate compassion and love, which means they got to give up their option to cuss somebody out when they're cussed out. And they don't want to give up that option. Are you with me? They don't want to become that spiritual. When becoming spiritual rubs up against and get in the way of their self-indulgence and their self-aggrandizement and their strategy for relieving themselves, that's too spiritual. So then they want to talk themselves into a spiritual condition. You can't talk yourself into a spiritual condition. They want to read a book and voila, be transformed into a Buddha. You ain't going to become no Buddha reading no book on Buddhism itself. You follow what I'm saying? I'm just telling you how it is. You see? It ain't for those who are lazy and don't want to do the work. But what you get in return is the supreme understanding. And your inner condition now is maintained in a state of peace. And that's a wonderful thing, to be able to be at peace in yourself no matter what's going on around you. Having no need to manipulate anything. Anything that happens is all right for it to happen, because we have reached a state of mind that cannot be affected, period. You see? You're able to abide in that condition, whether wake, sleep, you know what I mean? They never leave you. That's worth it, don't you think? And if you don't think it's worth it, then that's not to pursue the spiritual path. Go ahead. Play your game. It's your life. You want to piss it away, piss it away. But it's a profound matter. So at some point, this life that you were living gets more difficult. But that's all right, because you're not running no more. See, before we running, right? You're running from your suffering. Spiritual life, you put your arm around. See? Conventional life, you're running from pain. Spiritual life, you go through it. What you want is on the other side of that. Very different mindset. Hence, very few people at any time achieve that state. Very few. Very few. Very few. Most are going to settle for talking about being spiritual, reading about it. You follow what I'm saying? Emoting about it. You see? That's why every Tom, Dick, and Mary was not admitted into the car now. No, it wasn't even intended for every Tom, Dick, and Mary. Follow me? At all. Some of the most brilliant people contemporary to the mystery system were not even permitted to enter into it. People like Pythagoras, many of the Ionic philosophers, see, Thales, Axiomagus, and so forth. Okay, yeah? This is the real deal here, you know. It ain't feel-good history going on in Cardinal. You follow what I'm saying? Being black should never be enough for a black person. You follow what I'm saying? It's consciousness. All right, I think I wasted enough for the rest of the time. No, sir. Thank you very much. Guru Maji introduced a ritual out of the house, and I think you've fallen in love with it because it's holding of hands. And one of the things we always do in our own Sangha is we touch one another physically, because words can't do what a touch can do. So I'll let the President have a few closing remarks and then put us into a mood. And I think you have some music for us there.
We can all stand up and let's make our circle. Thank you all for being here.
We'll make our circle.
Dr. Ingram has laid something on us today. This is really tremendous what we're doing. This is really Karnak Wellness Institute. What we learned today is how to be well. If we really listen and learn, particularly open up our hearts, we really learn how to be well. And the learning was that we can't be well from the outside. Nobody from the outside can make us well. We have to know thyself. So until that happens, you have to keep coming out of Karnak to learn. Once you learn that, then you don't have to come anymore. When you know you thyself, you don't have to come to Karnak anymore. And then you can go out and teach others. Or you can come back to Karnak and teach the rest of us. So let's keep learning. This is real heavy because this is Black History Month. There's so much to learn about our history. It's an election coming up. A lot of turmoil in the community. A lot of division. A lot of people saying bad things about us, about each other. And we can't let an election about a city change us as a people. We can't do that. We cannot be negative towards each other. So this was a great kickoff, Dr. Ingram. We have some other great lectures and seminars coming up. We have to keep studying, and we have to really begin to learn and know thyself. That was a powerful piece, Dr. Ingram. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for being here. We have to transform ourselves before we can transform society. So before we go out trying to change others, let's know thyself, and let's really be sincere about what we're trying to do. We're not just coming here to feel good at the end of the lecture, but to change ourselves so we can make a difference in our community. So thank you all for coming. See you next Saturday at 3 o'clock. Thank you so much. Now we're holding hands. Do we have some music?
We have some music, and the theme of the music is to learn how to be happy, that you simply exist at all. Particularly those of us who have been fortunate enough to get this precious human body. You look at this place and look at all of the millions and millions of forms that life has taken. You see, almost a negligible number of those forms are human. This human form is the greatest gift that can be given to any life ever. So be happy that you're simply here. And that'll make a lot of your problems disappear. Fair enough?
Yes. Yeah.
I'm so happy to be on this side of the ground. It's a blessing to me. Every day that I see, I could have been dead and gone. so tired. And my soul is taken, going straight to the light. I know the road gets long, and it gets hard to see. That's when I sing my song, this here melody. I'm so happy to be on this side of the line. It's a blessing to be in the sunshine. Every day that I see, I could have been dead long. I don't have to be free. I've been living in love. I'm so happy. Yeah, I'm so happy to be on this side of the ground. It's a blessing to be every day that I see. I could have been dead long. I don't have to be free. I've been living in love. I'm so happy to be on this side of the ground. It's a blessing to be every